So now we're going to segue into the best part of today's Day with the Experts is the real experts here, families and users of AAC. So they're going to talk about their experiences. First, I would just ask if you can go down and share who you are and your connection to AAC.
There's a microphone to share. Okay. It should be on.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, my name is Melanie, and I have a 6-year-old son who is autistic with speech apraxia, and he is an AAC device user.
Hi, my name is Leah Keckley, and I'm a mom to a 8.5-year-old daughter who has Down syndrome and also has apraxia of speech. She utilizes an AAC as a form of her communication. It's not. She also communicates verbally and with sign, so it's one of her forms.
And Stash.
Hello, I'm Anastasia Wilson. I am a cum laude graduate from the University of Whitewater with a bachelor's in fine art and a minor in English. I'm staffing in a grad level program that trains professionals to improve their services to children with disabilities in their field. I use AAC because I have cerebral palsy.
Great, thanks so much. So our first question for our panelists is, what is one thing about you or your family members' experience with communication strategies that you would like to share with others?
So one thing I'd love to know, or that I'd love people to know, is that communication comes in many forms, and all of them are valid. I've heard over the years, why don't you teach your son sign language? And my answer is very simple. While American Sign Language is a great way to communicate, how many people actually know sign language other than the alphabet and the most basic signs? So my son would still not be able to communicate with others in the community. My son's AAC device gave him a voice, but it also gave us a way to truly understand his thoughts and his personality. It's not just a tool, it is a connection to the world.
For us, we've utilized an AAC device for our daughter since she was about 18 months old, which sounds like not very common to have it introduced that young. And I think that's very upsetting to me to hear that folks are not being exposed to this tool at a really young age, because for us, it was such an amazing way for us to be able to know what she wanted and needed. And I feel like it has really helped. It really helped her with like frustration and just general, like us being able to understand her personality more from a really young age. And we're always shout out this SLP that was in our Birth to 3, who introduced us to these tools right away and really helped our family understand communication as beyond verbal communication is communication, and really understanding that there's all sorts of ways to have back and forth interaction and understanding what a child needs, from eye gaze to then potentially gesturing and so on and so forth, and really like helping us key into those signs for her for how she was communicating with us as she was utilizing, like learning to utilize the AAC. And I think the other piece is that for us, her use of the AAC has changed as she's gotten older and in different classes, and just based on those around her and how they utilize it. And so there's a lot of creativity to be able to, in the use of the AAC for her, where she's used it as a tool in different ways as she's developed verbal communication. And we continue to find it to be a very valuable tool for her.
Staffing Lend, a grad level program that trains professionals to improve their services to children with disabilities in their field. I would love to tell people that we are just like other people with hopes and dreams. So please, treat us the same as anyone else. Also, using a communication device isn't always easy, so please have patience when talking with us. On to the next person.
So the second question is, how do you or your family members explain or describe their communication to others?
It's simple. We usually tell people that his AAC device is his voice, because it is. It's how he shares his feelings and participates in conversations, and it's eventually he's going to be able to tell his very first joke. Sometimes, to make it easier, we say that he talks with his iPad, which helps kids and adults understand it's just a different way to communicate. Last summer, when my son was using the AAC device on the trial basis, we went to a fly-in breakfast, with the airplanes, and they cooked the breakfast. An older gentleman noticed his device and asked what it was. It turned into this beautiful moment of awareness and acceptance. He was absolutely fascinated and amazed at how far technology has come and how it can give someone like my son a voice.
I always like to tell this little story about when my daughter was about 2.5, and we were with her cousins who were 4.5 and 7. And we were on this big road trip. It was sort of chaotic. And we're in this car, 4 adults, 3 kids. It was just chaos. And she has her device, and she had been kind of pushing some different buttons that we weren't quite sure if she was trying to find something that she wanted, or if we weren't quite sure if she was trying to communicate something, or she was maybe just like trialing out some of the buttons. And then all of a sudden she starts pushing, "It's such a mess. It's such a mess," because the car was a mess, and she's pushing, "It's such a mess." And then she says, "I love it. I love it." And my nephews were like, "Oh my gosh," and they still tell the story all the time. And it's kind of like the first joke kind of situation for us. And it really helped the boys understand the device better, because they had been saying like, "Well, it's an iPad and I play on the iPad," and we were like, "Well, this is only used for her communication," and trying to help them understand that. And then this was just that really great opportunity for them to really see like, she's so funny. And we're like, "She is so funny," but they hadn't quite, as, young kids, they hadn't quite picked up like the subtleties of her, silly little personality yet. And this was just like that perfect opportunity for them to, be able to hear that for them. And then since then they continued that was 6 years ago now. They tell that story all the time. They've met friends in school that utilize different communication tools, and they always utilize that as like a point for them to be like, "Oh yeah, you can tell jokes on that. You can do different things on there." And that's so I like to use that as an example of just like what an AAC is and what it can do and how it can build relationship.
I joke that I'm magical. This computer that I am talking through is my communication device. It tracks my eyes to select the buttons. Is that cool or what? I have a funny story about getting my first communication device. My parents say I wasn't very happy that day. So my first speech language pathologist said, Sasha, I know you're frustrated, but if you let me show you something, I will teach you how to tell us all to go jump in a lake. I have that thing in my light talker for many years. On to the next person.
Perfect, thanks. So the third question is, what has been your experience with education and the school system supporting you or your family members' communication system?
For us, it's been a mix of wonderful and challenging. We've had amazing teachers and therapists who truly believe in modeling AAC and including him in class discussions. My son was in kindergarten last year, and his speech therapist, she retired at the end of the school year, and I'm heartbroken still. But she was the biggest supporter in my son's journey. But consistency is key, especially when new staff come in. It often takes extra advocacy to make sure his communication system is fully supported and used throughout the school day. Eli consistently comes home with the device ranging from about 50 to 60% battery left, so it's definitely being used.
For us, because we started utilizing the AAC when May was so young, she was not moving independently yet. And that was a time when it was kind of more challenging. We were also new to kind of everything. To sort of gauge what does advocacy look like from a parent perspective, and, like trying to kind of build that skill set on our side of things too. But it wasn't that the team was not willing to support her use. It was were really wanting, I think they were emphasizing her physical motor growth, and so they were kind of prioritizing that as they cared for her, and so then they would like leave the AAC over there and then she's over here, and so we tried to help them find times in the day that they felt they could really support that communication and not feel like they were trying to prioritize one over the other. So really emphasizing like during snacks and lunch and that kind of thing when she's shouldn't be moving around all over the place, and they could kind of start to really build her skill set that way. And once they were able to see, because I think it was also that they didn't think she was old enough. So they thought like, we don't see kids this young doing this. So is she really old enough to do this? And so once they could see that she would be asking for things, they also were able to prioritize it more because they saw the value. And that was kind of a challenging experience for us. As she's gone into public school, every year is a little different in terms of the team. We had a really amazing speech therapist when she was in kindergarten who they actually got a device for themselves, and they were utilizing it as like a modeling tool, but for all of for the entire class. So it was helping to decrease an othering experience. They utilized the tool of their own. So, they had theirs, and then May had her own. And that also allowed for a lot more communication with the kids in the classroom about the use of the tool. That speech therapist was very creative and really saw how May wanted to use it or didn't want to use it. And one thing that they kind of helped bridge for her was she likes to communicate verbally, but is very shy around peers. She's not shy in a big group. Actually, she would be like very happy to sit here and talk to a bunch of adults. But other kids, she's like, oh, thank you. And so that speech therapist did a really great job at seeing that and helping May see how her device could help her talk to her peers and feel more comfortable, because her verbal speech is tough to understand. And so when peers can't understand her, that just, it becomes frustrating to her. So that speech therapist had her utilizing it for like the morning meeting talks, but that took a lot of collaboration with her primary kindergarten teacher. So what's the prompt going to be? Okay, May and I are going to sit over here. We know what the prompt is beforehand. We're going to look at the device, choose what she wants to say, and then she's got it ready. So then when it's her turn in the circle, she can utilize the device for that. And so again, when you have somebody who's really championing it in the educational system, it has really made a huge difference. The years when we have folks that are uncomfortable with it, it's been a lot less consistent. And then her skills are kind of waver throughout that year.
My grade school assisted my parents with purchasing my first communication device. My speech language pathologist and my grade school teachers were very supportive of me. They taught me coping strategies to become a successful AAC user, such as preparing my messages in advance. The next person can go.
Perfect. So our next question is, what are some of the challenges you faced with AAC?
Consistency and patience. It takes time for others to slow down, wait for responses, and remember to model on the device. Also, keeping the device charged, accessible, and customized as the language grows is an ongoing task. But those challenges are worth it when you see the confidence grow.
I would say that we've gone through a few different programs throughout May's use with the AAC, trying to find the right fit for her and how she wants to navigate it. And that's been tricky, particularly if you switch programs. It's, it's a big learning curve to relearn programming. But there's been times when we felt like it hasn't been intuitive to what she needs, but trying to figure out what she needs. And like, is there a way to adapt that, or is it just like a learning curve and we need to sit in it longer versus trying something new? So I'd say that's been a challenge beyond the ones we spoke to about consistency with the team, and so trying to find the right fit and finding ways to utilize it in a way that makes the most sense for each individual and their families and that kind of thing.
My greatest pet peeve is when people baby talk to me. I would get so angry because I felt as if the person was undermining my intelligence. It took many years for me to realize it was saying more about their intelligence than mine. I noticed people assume that individuals who are nonverbal have intellectual disabilities more than other disabilities. I still have not figured why that is, but it's annoying. On to the next person.
Perfect. Our next question is, what are your experiences or concerns about the transition to adulthood?
So even though my child is only 6 years old, I already think about how to make sure his voice is always respected, whether that's in school, community settings, or eventually adulthood. My biggest hope is that society continues to become more inclusive so AAC users can be heard in every space.
I agree. I also feel like I do a little bit of a dance between wanting to work on advocacy that will help the future, right? So to help her as she moves into adulthood, and also try to look at her for who she is right now and not project into the future too much. So it's kind of that like global, build a better future, but you are 8.5, and I'm going to try to keep thinking about you as an 8.5-year-old, because if I start to, project into the future too much, I'm going to think of all sorts of things that may or may not happen. And, is a valuable time spent and potentially anxiety. So I guess that's kind of how I think about adulthood for her right now, which isn't entirely true, right? I'll be like, oh, where would you live? What are you gonna? And I'm like, why? I don't know. So.
My transition to adulthood was a rocky one. DVR misdiagnosed me with a cognitive disability. They gave me a standardized test to come to this wrong conclusion. They didn't accommodate for my learning disabilities. They tested me on reading manually, but they did not test my comprehension of the material. It was very stigmatizing for me. Based off that test, my high school pulled me out of mainstream classes. Those days were very dark for me, to say the least. To make a long story short, I worked day and night to get accepted at UW Whitewater to shed off the wrong label. Besides, it was always my dream to go away to college to study art. I loved my crazy college years. My art professors accepted me and helped me to grow as an artist. I found a new self-confidence. On to the next person.
Our next question is, who or what has been your biggest support on you or your family members' communication journey?
Our biggest supports have been my autism mom friends who also have children with AAC devices. Eli's school team, past and current, Miss Becca. But honestly, Eli, he's been the biggest teacher. His persistence remind us that communication is not perfect, that it is about connection.
I have mentioned a few of the different speech therapists in our time that have been really impactful. And I think that having different teachers in the school system that have really recognized the the flexibility, having that flexibility in ways to help support May's communication has been really valuable to us. I think that we've had lots of different people kind of help us look at communication really broadly. And I wouldn't have said it, but now that you mentioned like the other parents in the support group or community of a similar diagnosis, I would say that has been really huge. And when my daughter was a baby, talking to moms it was mainly moms, I like to say generally parents, but it was really mainly moms, to talk about talk about the future with this little baby with Down syndrome. What are things I should be doing to help support her? And, kind of, we've got all these different therapists and all this different stuff. What, do I do we do it all? Like, do we pick and choose? What, how do we go to PT, OT speech multiple times a week. We've got speech therapists for multiple different things. How do we choose? Like, what do we choose? And I had one mom that said, if you have to you feel like from a time management, you need to make a choice. If you really emphasize communication, you're going to be able to access her, and you'll be able to get to know her differently. And you're going to be able to, have this relationship with her that, will obviously grow with time. But, if you're kind of feeling like you need to make some decisions about which therapist to go to, she said, from my experience, and her kid was in his 20s, I would choose kind of honing in on that communication. And I really think that was really valuable for me to, as this new mom that's trying to go to, 15 appointments a week, to really see like the value in that communication and the growth that can happen when you have access to different tools. So.
My childhood best friend, Jenny, helped me on my journey to accept my communication device as my voice. She loved to play around with all of my communication devices, and she would access them the way I would. This helped me to view it as a cool toy instead of a medical device. The next person can go.
Perfect. Our last question is, what activities bring you and your family joy or satisfaction?
We love spending time outside, swimming, boating, and camping was a huge hit this year. We love to listen to music and having family dance parties. Seeing my son use his device to request a favorite song, which is usually Ram Sam Sam or Hickory Dickory Dock. And that he tells us that it's fun, makes every small moment so joyful.
We also really love being outside and hiking. We have a lot of opportunity in the summers to travel, and so we do kind of big road trips. And my husband's a high school teacher, and I work in education as well, so we get these kind of chunks of time off in the summer. So we kind of hunker down, spend a bunch of time as a family of four, and camp and hike and that kind of thing, which we always really happy doing that.
I am an artist. My dad provides with a method for me to express myself through art. He makes my head stick. Over the years, there have been many modifications to the head sticks to assist me to pursue my dreams. My dad got me a big drafting table that I can drive my power chair underneath. We can adjust the height. My aide sets my oil paint up. After my aide places my head stick on my head, I paint independently. I leave everything set up. I can do my magic when I am ready. Also, I enjoy my independence, and I can go by myself out in the community. If I need assistance, I know how to ask for help when I am alone in the community. I love adventure, and I have been skydiving with my mom. My dad used to take me for motorcycle rides. He has a big wraparound seat, so I ride on the back. I love checking off things that I unconsciously thought I would never do. One of the things that help me stay healthy in my community is to experience new things and enjoy what is out there.
Thank you so much. We have time if anyone has a question for our panelists. Tessa, go ahead. Do we have a microphone?
Just
Hello. Thank you so much for sharing. That was so great to hear. I have a question that I'm happy to have anyone answer, but I feel like could primarily be directed towards Leah and Sasha. I know you touched a little bit on it, but I'd love to hear more about your experience with sort of switching devices and your experience to getting where you are with the current device that your daughter has and sort of your experience. I know you had said you have several communication devices and like have in the past. So how you feel now, like how you grow with your device and just sort of your experience with that.
Yeah, I can start us off. So the when we originally were looking at an AAC device, we had a lot of different that we were sort of trialing. And we settled on one, which I feel terrible that I can never remember any of the names. It's like the second, I think, when I'm like, was that the first one? Was that the second one? Did we never even use that one? So I'm not even gonna try. I know I feel like they do. I mean, anyways. So we settled in on one and it worked pretty well, although I kind of ended up moving like her buttons around. And she really loved to tell us what she wanted to listen to because she loves music. So that was a huge motivator for her. And then also to talk about like her family and friends. So we had buttons so that she could like get to all of her classmates and everyone had their pictures in there. And so that was very motivating for her. So in some ways it felt like having like a quick access to just like directly get to those sort of choice screens beyond. So it wasn't really about like building a sentence necessarily. It was more about like, because she would also sign. So she would basically be kind of like signing for you and then like would go and try to, tell you like which friend she wanted to talk to. So she was kind of using it for, yeah, she was so she's like jumping between both forms of communication. But then we started realizing that as she got older, helping her to really like build out the sentences was going to be more helpful, kind of like what I talked about with the morning meeting in kindergarten and stuff. So at that point, that speech therapist who was such a champion for AAC felt like the original device we had was just a little too like short structuring and it didn't give her like the expansion that she would need. And so, but wanted something that was similar enough that it wasn't like a huge jump to transition to a different tool. So, in that process, we were able to find one that had similarities to the original. So she didn't feel like she didn't know what she was looking at, but could give her that opportunity to build longer sentences. And now she's in third grade and she is working on her writing. And so right now, if she's like reading something, she will and she really loves to read. So this is an area that she really enjoys. She will like read a story and then they say like, okay, what's your sentence to describe the story? But she's not able to write that sentence out on her own or do the spelling. So her aide would come and like, she would say, the eagle is big or something. And then they would write that out and then she would go to write it. But now we're utilizing this aid to like write that sentence. And so we've been talking about, well, let's utilize her device. So she could build the sentence on the device and then she can use that as her visual tool to work on her written work. So that's kind of where we're at now. And having that device that can have those longer sentences is very valuable for her to keep building that skill. Yeah.
When I receive a new device, I feel I got a new Christmas toy. I press every button just to see what it does.
Perfect. Well, Thank you all so much for attending this day, both in person and to our online viewers. Thank you to all of our panelists. That's such valuable information for all of us. And this recording will be posted online along with the slides. Thank you.